Hello! Welcome back to Walla Walla, the special place on the internet where this guy and that guy sit around and we talk about movies and stuff. In this one, we're back again to share our favorites for the top 5 free movies on YouTube for the month of March 2024.
Number 5.
Alright, number 5 for me was between two movies. I'd say total polar opposites. I did notice Time Traveler's Wife was free. That's like one of my favorite, if I had to pick like not even a rom-com, I guess a romance. But I'm going to have to push that one aside for Collateral, because we got some Jamie Foxx, Tom Cruise action, and I love this movie. It's about a normal taxi driver. I guess he's down on his luck and all that, but then he meets a hitman actually just hires him for his driving, and then he just gives him money for the rest of the night, and it turns out that this high-paying driver isn't all he seems to be, and he's actually like a hitman, and it's a pretty wild ride, and I really like how it ends. But what about you? Have you seen? I know you've seen Collateral. We talked about this one, I think, right?
Absolutely love Collateral. I think Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx have surprisingly good chemistry. And I think one of my favorite parts in the movie is the club scene. Was my favorite club shootout scene until John Wick happened.
But what about you, number 5?
Yeah, so went with a classic, Ghostbusters. One of my favorite movies from the 80s, but I absolutely love the chemistry between like Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Peter Venkman. It's a really funny film, especially just how it all ends. You would never see any of this stuff coming, and I think there's a reason why all the remakes have never been able to capture the magic of those four. Like they're great. It makes you wonder about supernatural stuff and like, who would you call? I don't think anybody considered these things. Like that wasn't a real thing.
Oh! Beat him up!
Number 4.
All right, I was gonna pick this one if you had a documentary because it's kind of documentary-esque, but I still want to pick it anyway just so I can say I said it. If you're ever sitting home alone one night, you want to watch a movie to yourself, but you also like want to freak yourself out a little bit, watch The Fourth Kind.
Oh yeah, that's another classic right there.
Okay.
It's not my cup of tea, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, like in what sense though? Like
right
the horror? Go. Like does it scare you too much? Or
yeah,
like,
it's.
I was gonna say the first time I watched it home alone one night, and I was like, why did I do this to myself?
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those, like you said, where it's like a pseudo documentary, and it's it's kind of like the first time you see the Blair Witch, and
yeah, it's a good comparison.
I'm not gonna say it scares you, but like if it's dark and you're like thinking about it, it just kind of drives you a little nuts. And then when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, what was I thinking? But like that's kind of my vibes I get from The Fourth Kind.
I don't know. I remember it was an experience the first time I've ever seen it. So I would say that to someone if you want to experience it and like open your mind to it. Also, my other one was Against the Skeleton Key. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I haven't seen it recent enough to actually recommend it. I just remember it's like kind of like a creepy thriller with what's her name? Who's Goldie Hawn's kid? Who's always in rom-coms instead?
You're talking about Kate Hudson, right?
That's it, Kate Hudson. Yeah.
Mom, she's late. She's always late.
Wait, honey.
Mom.
My pick for number 4.
And it's not a documentary? I'm very shocked.
It's not, yeah. I went with a Bruce Willis film that's called 12 Monkeys, which was like a cult film, and almost nobody I knew had heard of it, but they actually recently made a TV show, which I've not watched, based on it. So it's obviously gained enough popularity where they could make a TV show. Bruce Willis, like Brad Pitt is in there. It's set in like a post-apocalyptic future. Bruce Willis is your protagonist. All that they know is like the future. It's just like devastated by like a disease. They got to wear special like suits and things like that. Bruce Willis is like a convict, and he gets sent back in time to gather information on like who made the virus that wiped out like the majority of like the human population. I think it did well in the box office, but typically if you think like Bruce Willis, you do not think this movie.
You know how to get out of here? Yes, my son.
Number 3.
Number 3 is definitive for me. I've loved this movie so much, and it's so funny based off what I just said, and it's probably out of context now because it's probably cut from the edit. I was just saying I was glamored by the Mel Gibson in Signs. One of my favorite, I guess you call it a rom-com, but it's like a guy's rom-com, but also a girl's rom-com. It's got everything for both sides, I should say. But it's called What Women Want, and it's a lead of Mel Gibson, and he's trying to get a higher-up job at an advertising firm. It's given to a woman because they needed more of a woman's perspective at his company, and he eventually circumstances happen. You should watch it. Circumstances happen, and he eventually magically gets the ability to hear what women think. And it's just so many hijinks. They hit all the bases with where you think that could go, in my opinion. He's just great in the role too. It's just he's a man's man, and then he's forced to come down to a woman's, more of a perspective of a woman, I should say. Great film.
I heard someone say once 2 heads are better than 1, 5 heads are better than
Oh, you were listening.
more than you know.
What do you got for your number 3?
Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. My number 3 was Collateral, so had to throw that out.
In the
With
trash,
the new one.
but not
So I
really.
quickly
In the
came
good
up
movie bin.
with an alternate.
We'll shelf it.
This is gonna be one that I'm curious how you're gonna feel about, but went with a sports drama. It's kind of like biographical on a boxer who I am a fan of for a trilogy fight that he had later in his career after this movie I'm about to talk about takes place. This movie is called The Fighter, and it stars Mark Wahlberg. It's got Christian Bale as his brother, who's kind of a drug addict, who the family thought was going to be like the best fighter, but had through drug use not actually been what he could have been. And you have the younger brother, Mickey Ward, played by Mark Wahlberg, who actually what goes from like paving streets to actually becoming like a top boxer. And it's a true story about it, although it skips quite a bit in it. It was done pretty well because Christian Bale acting as Dickie is phenomenal in it. Very entertaining.
Yeah, I hope if we can train.
We can train, right? I mean, enough of you wasting time, man,
Wasting time?
Half the day's gone.
Oh, now I'm waiting.
Huh?
Yeah,
You
half
got
the
work to
day's
do.
gone. I've been waiting here.
You wanna
for
win?
half the-
Number 2.
Number 2, we're staying on the train. Well, the Christian Bale train. And I actually just recently watched this within the last year, and I loved it and wished I watched it sooner, and I definitely recommend it. It's called Out of the Furnace. And I think I've definitely talked to you about it.
It takes place in Braddock, which is like I work right next to Braddock. I literally know the chief of the Braddock police. Big controversial. He actually stepped down recently.
Oh, shit.
You think it's going one place, and it just doesn't. It goes very much in a different direction.
That's why I was trying to think of how to explain the plot, but I'm like, I feel like there's just so many moving parts and so many things happen. I think you just need to watch it. It's like his life. His life happens. It just happens. And Woody Harrelson is a real son of a bitch.
Yeah, you kind of will get a lot of different feelings, and a lot of them are negative. But it's a good movie. I do enjoy it a lot, too.
I ain't talking shit. And our slate ain't clean, motherfucker.
All right, what do you got for your number 2?
An action-packed movie. It's a war movie, Saving Private Ryan, which if you're going to watch any war movie, or if you're even thinking about enlisting in the military, something that I do think is a patriotic thing to do, and I'm not going to tell you it's not a good thing. I considered it myself when I was young. But watch the opening scenes of Saving Private Ryan, the storming of the beaches of Normandy by the American forces, so you can feel how terrifying it was for them. It's just incredible to think about what Americans did in like the 40s to protect the world. And then that scene specifically is just like shocking. This is Steven Spielberg like at his absolute best. And just, of course, it has a that guy ending. So, I love it.
Also a random Vin Diesel.
Hey, drop dead, Corporal.
Gotcha.
And another thing, every time you salute the captain, you make him a target for the Germans. So do us a favor, don't do it. Especially when I'm standing next to him, capiche?
Number 1.
My number 1 was going to be The Wedding Singer, but I'm going to make it a double feature with The Longest Yard. And I didn't pick The Longest Yard because it was last month's movies, and I wasn't sure if it's going to be taken off, but I don't really care anymore. I'm just going to put it in here anyway. If you see this and you're lucky enough, you can still catch it for free. The Longest Yard is for free. Also, The Wedding Singer, which are 2 great Adam Sandler films in my opinion. One's a rom-com, obviously, Wedding Singer. It's a little bit older, great soundtrack. The 80s, Romeo and Juliet, kind of. And then we got The Longest Yard, which, like you said, it's kind of funny you mentioned me not liking sports movies or not. I'll take this. And it's actually a remake from an old 70s film, I believe.
The original one is actually beloved and much more of a serious movie.
Burt Reynolds returns or reprises it for this one, but he's just like a different character, I think. He goes to prison as like a washed up pro football player, and then he's basically forced into running a team of convicts against the guards at the prison, and then it just becomes this giant thing. It's like a fun sports movie.
Better cut that shit out. It's getting old.
Can't remember if I've talked about this movie, so I'm sorry if you hear me gush about this movie again. I went with a film based on a novel that I thoroughly enjoyed by Cormac McCarthy, a author who can be very hit or miss with people. He also made a book that was very much supposed to be made into a film, and I think it's his best work that can be translated into film. It is called No Country for Old Men. It stars Tommy Lee Jones as like your old grizzled sheriff, Josh Brolin as your kind of maverick protagonist, Javier Bardem as the bad guy. And I'd say it's very close to how the book is written. You're just seeing how is this crazy story all going to tie together and finish. It's just that kind of new age Western film.
Yeah.
Like I kind of look at No Country for Old Men or like Hell or High Water
I was
as like
just
your
thinking
modern
that. I was just
Western.
thinking that. It's so funny.
Yeah. And I love both those films. And I'm a big Western guy. And this is just the new era of Westerns. Like this is kind of how we do it now.
Call it.